You'd think that a couple of chickens pecking around in a backyard would be a peaceful thing, quaint even. The kind of thing that screams retirement dreams or farm to table fresh eggs or look at me, I'm living the good life in the suburbs while pretending I'm on a rustic homestead. But no, not in this neighborhood, not in the tyrannical HOA kingdom ruled by none other than Kerren, the self-appointed supreme overlord of chicken complaints, Judge Judy of backyard aesthetics, and the international spy of all things poultry. I swear, the woman had binoculars trained on my yard 24/7 like she was waiting to catch my hens plotting a coup. And by a couple of chickens, I mean exactly 4. Yes, 4 fluffy, lovable, egg-laying ladies who minded their own business, clucked softly, and did the earth the noble service of eating bugs. But to Kerren, those 4 chickens were apparently the downfall of modern civilization. The day they arrived in their tiny coop, all feathers and fluff, I felt like I'd adopted feathered angels. Kerren, on the other hand, looked like she'd witnessed an actual crime. She marched right over in her floral visor, her clipboard of doom in hand, and told me with the conviction of a lawyer in a courtroom drama that I was in violation of subsection 3, paragraph 12, clause B of the HOA covenant. Something about unauthorized agricultural livestock. I told her they were pets. She told me I had 48 hours to remove them or face fines that could fund a small moon landing. I laughed because surely this was a joke. It was not. The next morning, a formal citation was duct taped to my mailbox. Not in it, on it, in red ink, with a smiley face sticker which somehow made it worse. My crime, illegal poultry activity. I kid you not, those were the exact words. So naturally, I invited Kerren over for eggs, fresh eggs, sunny side up, with toast and jam, and a side of "I'm not backing down." She declined. Instead, she took photos of the coop and sent them to the HOA board, accompanied by a scathing email titled "The Foul Offender." This woman wasn't just against chickens. She was on a moral crusade to eliminate all clucking life forms within a 5-mile radius. I tried reasoning. I tried charm. I even tried bribing her with a basket of eggs dyed pastel colors like it was Easter morning. Nothing worked. The more I resisted, the more Kerren leaned into her role as poultry police. I started receiving citations daily. Noise disturbance, she claimed. The chickens weren't noisy. If anything, her 3-hour daily rants to anyone who'd listen were the real noise violation. Then came the sanitation hazard ticket. Despite the fact that my coop was cleaner than most restaurants, it escalated faster than a soap opera plotline. The HOA board began threatening legal action. Kerren was now bringing other HOA members to peer over my fence like they were inspecting a crime scene. I started to feel like the poultry version of a mob boss, hiding my chickens from the authorities, whispering, "The eggs are in the basket," like it was a code phrase. And that's when the idea hit me. Not just a revenge plan, but an epic, extraordinary act of defiance. If Kerren thought 4 chickens were a threat, what would she do if I turned my entire property into a full-blown chicken farm? Not just a few hens, but dozens. A full clucking enterprise. The audacity of her campaign inspired me not to back down, but to escalate. I began making plans. I researched zoning loopholes, agricultural exemptions, and every HOA clause that could be twisted in my favor. I studied bylaws like I was preparing for a courtroom showdown. My mission wasn't just to keep my chickens. It was to make Kerren regret ever stepping foot near my coop. So I started small. A second coop appeared, camouflaged as a garden art installation. Kerren saw through it instantly, of course, and responded with a new citation titled "Unauthorized Poultry Habitat." I framed it and hung it in my hallway. Then came the community engagement angle. I began inviting neighborhood kids to learn about chickens, cleverly branded as educational outreach. You know what HOA boards hate more than rule breakers? Public backlash. And I was about to become the Mr. Rogers of backyard poultry. With each new hen, I felt my power grow. The chickens got names: Henrietta, Beyoncé, Cluck Norris, and Agatha Christie. My yard turned into a mini poultry paradise. I installed decorative signs like "Egg excellent vibes only, and laying it down since day one. Kerren looked like she aged a decade every time she peeked over the fence. And then the real transformation began. If I was going to make a point, it had to be theatrical, dramatic, Oscar-worthy. I started converting my backyard shed into a state-of-the-art chicken barn. Not a coop, a barn with automatic feeders, mood lighting, and even a mini stereo that played relaxing classical music for egg-laying ambience. People started visiting. My yard became the talk of the town. I started selling eggs, organic, cage-free, locally sourced, of course, out of a charming roadside stand. My business, Kerren's Clucks. Yes, I named it after her. Yes, I trademarked it. By this point, Kerren was practically foaming at the mouth. She begged the HOA board to intervene, but thanks to a few well-placed donations and a couple of neighborhood kids who had named their stuffed animals after my chickens, I had support. She was losing. The war had begun with feathers, but it was turning into a full-blown feud, and I was just getting started. By the time the second coop went up, I knew I had crossed the Rubicon. There was no turning back. My backyard had gone from a suburban lawn to a poultry paradise, and I was the proud, slightly deranged king of it all, while Kerren was still trying to file one complaint after another about foul intrusions and chicken-related trauma. I was too busy installing a rustic wooden sign at my gate that read Cluckingham Palace. It had a tiny crown painted on top. I might have gotten a little carried away, but listen, when a woman declares war over birds, you don't respond with diplomacy, you go full feathery assault. I doubled down. I started sourcing exotic chicken breeds, silkies or Pingtons, Ayam Chamanis. My backyard was now a walking encyclopedia of international clucking. The HOA meetings were turning into weekly Kerren meltdowns, which was honestly becoming my favorite reality show. She'd arrive with an armful of printed photos, citations, and dramatic gasps, demanding I be stopped. "He's built a chicken empire," she screeched once, like I was some kind of poultry Pablo Escobar. The board was growing weary, not just of me, but of her. Turns out, HOA folks don't love being dragged into barnyard drama every week. Meanwhile, I launched chicken yoga Sundays in my yard. Picture this: elderly neighbors stretching on yoga mats while hens strutted peacefully among them. It was serene, absurd, and weirdly popular. I had to add extra sessions. I started handing out egg-spirational quotes of the week, printed on little cards with every dozen eggs I sold. Things like, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket unless it's mine," or "Cluck you very much, HOA. My customer base expanded from curious neighbors to hipster cafes who couldn't get enough of my free-range, rebellion-fed eggs. Every morning I woke up to the soothing sounds of my chickens and the sight of Kerren's car crawling past my house like a paranoid egg cop on patrol. She'd slow down, squint through her window, jot notes furiously into what I assume was a folder labeled Operation Chicken Shutdown, and then speed off to the HOA clubhouse like she was smuggling intel. She even tried to get animal control involved, claiming my chickens were aggressive. Aggressive? The most threatening thing Henrietta ever did was poop near my tomato plants. Animal control came, took one look at my happy clucking crew, and asked if they could buy eggs. I gave them a discount. Kerren practically combusted. That's when she escalated. She hired a lawyer, yes, an actual lawyer, to investigate whether I could be sued for damages to the neighborhood's peace and aesthetic harmony. I laughed so hard I snorted coffee out of my nose. The lawyer, a guy who looked like he hated his life and regretted every decision that led him to HOA litigation, called me once. I invited him to tour the farm. He left with 24 eggs and a hand-knit cluck-off beanie one of my elderly yoga students made. But Kerren wouldn't stop. Her desperation turned into pettiness. She tried to install a 10-foot privacy fence between our properties. I filed a complaint about it violating height codes. Guess what? She had to take it down. She started blasting loud polka music during chicken yoga. I countered by installing wireless speakers and playing motivational speeches from famous farmers. My chickens were now clucking to the rhythms of "You Can Do It" and "Chase Your Dreams." One of them laid a double-yolked egg that day. I considered it a sign, but here's where it got really fun. I found out Kerren had a prized flower garden, roses, tulips, the whole Martha Stewart deluxe package. It was her pride and joy. And guess what chickens love to do when they're feeling cheeky? They dig. So I strategically, accidentally, let a few of my hens wander out. Nothing dramatic, just a casual oops. The gate blew open moment. They made a beeline for Kerren's garden like they were on a mission from the egg gods. Tulips were pecked. Soil was turned. Her prized peonies were now feather fertilized. Kerren screamed loud enough to wake the HOA ancestors. I played innocent. "Oh no," I said, holding a slightly muddy Henrietta in my arms. She must have sensed the flowers needed love. I offered her a complimentary dozen eggs as a peace offering. She threw one at me, missed, hit her own mailbox. That egg dried there for weeks. Beautiful, symbolic. My neighbors, once wary, were now either wildly entertained or openly supportive. I was the poultry folk hero they never knew they needed. People dropped by just to see the chickens. A retired postman started painting portraits of them. One even got featured in the local paper under the headline "Feathered Frenzy, the Chicken War of Willow Creek." Kerren was becoming a punchline. She tried to organize an anti-chicken rally. 3 people showed up. I held a counter event the same day called Feather Fest, complete with snacks, music, and a chicken costume contest. We had over 50 attendees. Kerren stood across the street, arms crossed, as someone in a giant foam rooster suit danced in front of her. I locked eyes with her, raised an egg in the air, and toasted. She left early. At this point, my house was practically a farm-to-table amusement park. I had a chicken-shaped weather van installed. I sold souvenir mugs. One of the mugs featured a cartoon, Kerren, screaming next to the words, "Cluck you, HOA." Sold out in 2 days. And yet, despite all this, I still had bigger plans. The ultimate poultry-powered finale was brewing, and it was going to be egg-explosive. At this point, my chicken farm wasn't just a backyard rebellion. It was a full-blown movement. Chickens strutted around like they owned the place, because they basically did. Neighbors came bearing kitchen scraps like offerings to poultry royalty, and I was well on my way to becoming the Colonel Sanders of suburban vengeance. But while I was basking in the glory of yoke-powered justice, Kerren, my HOA nemesis, neighborhood drama queen, and self-declared poultry prosecutor, was on the verge of a meltdown that would put the Chernobyl reactor to shame. Her latest weapon, a so-called noise pollution ordinance, she personally drafted and tried to sneak past the HOA board like a kid sliding a bad report card under the fridge. According to her, my chickens were screaming operatic ballads at ungodly hours and preventing her from achieving her essential morning meditations. That was rich, considering she once screamed at a squirrel for eyeing her begonias. Still, I played along. I invited a local sound engineer, yes, an actual sound guy with one of those big fuzzy boom mics, to measure decibels from my backyard. He laughed so hard when he realized the only noise pollution was Kerren herself, shouting at the chickens through her window like a Shakespearean villain with a feather phobia. Meanwhile, I had turned my humble coop into the Ritz-Carlton of chicken housing. I installed a tiny chandelier, plastic but classy, added soft lighting, a jazz music playlist for ambiance, and even gave each hen her own nesting nameplate. One coop was named Exquisite Manor, another Cluckingham Palace Annex. Tourists, yes, actual tourists, started showing up. Kerren lost what was left of her mind. She parked her lawn chair across from my driveway like a grumpy bouncer at a nightclub, jotting license plates in a notebook and snapping pictures like she was building a legal case for a Netflix docuseries called Murder Most Foul. But the final straw, oh, it was a glorious straw, came when I entered Henrietta, my sassiest hen, into the State Fair's annual Poultry Princess pageant. Not only did she win, but the local news ran a segment titled Suburban Chicken Reigns Supreme. And yes, they interviewed me. I wore a tie covered in little cartoon chickens and introduced myself as Lord of the Wings. When the segment aired, Kerren reportedly screamed into a pillow for 20 straight minutes. Her husband went golfing and never came back. I couldn't make this stuff up. She tried one last Hail Mary. She held a Save the Neighborhood town hall, complete with pamphlets that featured horrifying photoshopped images of giant chickens attacking houses like a feathery Godzilla. Most attendees came thinking it was a community potluck. They left with deviled eggs and selfies with Henrietta. At that point, it wasn't just a chicken farm. It was a cultural reset. I started hosting weekend chick flicks nights where we projected old movies in the yard and people lounged with the hens under fairy lights. The chickens wore little bow ties. It was Pinterest-worthy madness. Kerren, now operating solely on caffeine and spite, made one final push. She filed a lawsuit claiming emotional distress caused by constant exposure to poultry-related imagery. The judge, bless his weary soul, dismissed it faster than you could say rooster. Not only that, but he actually commended my operation for bringing the community together. The courtroom erupted in applause. Kerren muttered something about moving to a chicken-free neighborhood and stormed out in dramatic HOA defeat. The next day, I hosted a farewell party in her honor, complete with chicken-themed cupcakes, eggnog, and a live band that only played songs with the word chicken in them. My favorite moment, a neighbor gifting me a plaque that read, "For services to suburban sanity, presented by the people against Kerren." It now hangs proudly over the co-op entrance. But the true cherry on top came a week later when the local city council invited me to speak at a sustainable living seminar. Apparently, my chicken farm had become the poster child for urban backyard agriculture. I gave a passionate speech titled "Cluck Around and Find Out," received a standing ovation, and donated the proceeds to a fund for retired hens. Henrietta, now living her best life in a custom-made hen mansion with a velvet perch, clucked in support. Kerren, she eventually moved to a condo 3 towns over. No pets allowed. I sent her a going-away basket with eggs, a cluck-off mug, and a framed photo of Henrietta wearing her pageant crown. No response, but the silence? Oh, it was golden. These days, my chicken farm is thriving. We host school field trips, yoga retreats, and the occasional barnyard brunch. People come for the eggs, but they stay for the rebellion. I've written a book, Feathers of Fury, How One Man Took on the HOA and Won. It's currently number 3 in Suburban Revenge on Amazon. So if you're ever feeling like the world is pecking at your soul, just remember, one chicken at a time, you can change the world. And if someone like Kerren comes knocking, clutching an HOA violation slip and a bad attitude, just smile and hand them an egg, preferably raw. Now that the chickens had fully colonized my backyard and arguably the cultural soul of the entire neighborhood, I decided it was time for the final flourish, a grand finale, a statement so bold, so hilariously over the top, that it would echo through the halls of petty revenge history. See, Kerren might have left town, but her legacy of tyranny lingered like the scent of spoiled potato salad at a July cookout. HOA members were still twitchy. New neighbors approached me cautiously, unsure if I was a harmless eccentric or the feathered cult leader the rumors promised. So naturally, I leaned in hard. I organized the first ever suburban chicken festival. Yes, a full-fledged weekend-long extravaganza complete with food trucks, vendors selling chicken-themed crafts, egg painting contests, and an on-site cluck and strut chicken fashion show. My backyard became the Woodstock of poultry. We had senior citizens square dancing with hens in sun hats. We had a psychic who claimed to read chicken auras. And for the kids, bounce houses shaped like eggs. It was surreal, absurd, and completely magical. Meanwhile, my fame had outgrown the HOA's wildest nightmares. I was now being invited to podcasts with names like Peck Talk and Farmyard Frontiers. My email inbox was full of messages from aspiring backyard farmers looking for advice. I started selling branded t-shirts that read, "Cluck the System." They sold out in 2 days. My TikTok Yes, my grandson set one up for me. Went viral when I posted a slow motion video of Henrietta hopping dramatically onto a perch while O Fortuna played in the background. Kerren, from wherever she had relocated, must have been gnawing on her stress ball like a chew toy. But I wasn't done. See, there was one last HOA meeting before the board elections, and rumor had it Kerren had managed to pull a few strings to get a Zoom link. I couldn't resist. I logged on early, camera on, dressed in a three-piece suit patterned with tiny roosters, and sat in front of a bookshelf filled entirely with chicken-themed literature. I even had a mug that said, "World's Best Coop CEO." When Kerren appeared, there was a moment of stunned silence. Her hair looked frazzled, like she had been caught in a wind tunnel of regret. She immediately launched into a monologue about how my chicken chaos had spread like avian anarchy across a once pristine neighborhood. The screen flashed back and forth between confused board members, giggling residents, and me, stoically sipping my tea like a man who'd replaced HOA tyranny with clucking freedom. Then, the best part, I presented a petition. Over 300 signatures from local residents, not only supporting the chicken farm, but nominating me for the HOA board. Not to dismantle it, oh no, but to run it fairly, with compassion, and occasionally breakfast eggs. The vote passed unanimously. Kerren's connection mysteriously dropped right after that. Rumor has it she moved to a high-rise where the only birds allowed are decorative swans on lobby carpets. So I became the very thing I once mocked, an HOA president. But instead of enforcing rules with the cold rigidity of a traffic warden with a clipboard fetish, I rebranded the HOA as the Happy Outrageous Agriculture Club. We hosted seed swaps, backyard permaculture tutorials, beekeeping 101 sessions. Kerren's cronies slowly resigned, one by one, replaced by retirees in overalls and straw hats who greeted each other with chicken-themed puns. And me? I took it all in stride. Sometimes I'd walk out in the morning, coffee in hand, and look over my miniature suburban utopia, hens pecking happily, children chasing chicks, neighbors waving from behind tomato plants, and I'd just smile because I had done it. I had taken a petty complaint about chickens and turned it into an empire of joyful rebellion. Sure, it started with spite, but it ended with something far richer: community, eggs, and unfiltered satisfaction. Of course, I kept a photo of Kerren taped inside the coop, just as a reminder. Some people keep vision boards. I keep my villains close, clucking distance to be precise. One morning, as I gathered eggs and Henrietta strutted beside me like a retired pageant queen with a mortgage, I whispered, "We did it, girl." She responded with a dignified cluck and hopped into a lavender-scented nesting box. These days, my farm even has a little wooden sign out front. It reads, "Welcome to Coupe de Grace," where HOA nightmares become feathery dreams. Tour buses stop for photo ops. Local bakeries buy my eggs. Grandparents bring grandkids just to see the famous chickens from the internet. And every once in a while, I get a letter, anonymous, shaky handwriting, no return stress, ranting about avian tyranny. I frame those. Because in the end, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something so good, so defiantly joyful, that even your enemies can't look away. And if you can do it while wearing a t-shirt that says "Cluck off," well, all the better. So to all the Karens and Kerrens out there with a vendetta against joy, watch out. The chickens are coming, and they've got a plan.